Hello and welcome to another Best Junglers episode, this one for patch 14.18, the World's Patch. That means that Riot buff things that don't need to be buffed, and that will curse our solo queue just for a little bit. There were a lot of changes to champions, nerfs to Lilia, rebuffs to fleet footwork if you're melee, and as always we will go over the best junglers overall as well as for low and high MMR, but if you want to know how to apply all of these champions to the best jungle strategies, you have to go to Virkayu.gg. Not only do I have a free jungle improvement resource, I also have a dedicated program with jungle video courses, jungle coaching classes, a jungle VOD library, special weekly content you'll see nowhere else. All of this available through a premium jungle Discord, which is highly active, a huge community that help each other climb using my jungle program and courses. As we have seen by everybody hitting their peak rank goals in Split 1 and Split 2 of Season 14 as fast as possible. So to climb faster than everybody you know and to jungle diff every game you play, head to Virkayu.gg or click the link in the description below. Well, Viego apparently needed to have his base AD buffed, which impacts his clear because it applies to all your spells, and he has an attack speed steroid, so bonus AD will always do better on champions who can amp that up with every single auto. This means they did remove some bonus damage to monsters, which had some Viego mains saying it was a nerf. Yeah, I don't know, don't ask. The whole thing is, though, they wanted to kind of bring in the Trinity Force build, which was already a thing, it was already okay, but they wanted to amp that up a bit more. So now Trinity Force is a great rush, again, always was, but now it's better. But ultimately, the thing is, when they nerfed Kraken a few times in this season, they removed the Noon Quiver, Viego did have a little bit of that residual nerf to his kit. So while in theory I was okay with, say, buffing the bonus damage to monsters by a little bit to offset the like a Noon Quiver, maybe you could then help him move around, Riot thought he cleared too quickly. I don't think anyone thought he cleared too quickly. He cleared well, but I don't really think it was at the point where you needed to nerf it. Regardless, the people's favorite jungler now has been buffed. He is once again the best overall jungler in the game with multiple build path variations. Yes, the win rate isn't as juiced as you might think it is, but that's fine. That's a skill issue and that's an itemization issue. When you have a lot of skill diversity and diversity in builds, you're gonna see a variance in the win rate that isn't true to their power. This is very different from Kha'Zix, whose power has been indisputable for basically the entire season. People are still trying to claim that this champion is somehow weak. Guys, if you're building him properly and you have Edge of Night, you should have zero issue going in and out of fights, winning every game, controlling the narrative, and being the best assassin in the game. And remember, when it's an ADC meta or there's just lots of ADCs running around and squishies, that's when assassins really turn on the juice. That's when the nitro fuel gets activated and they take over games because there's no real peel. People aren't playing tanks and enchantress correctly, and use a Kha'Zix with your R evolve can move in and out of fights as you like. With your Q evolve, can run around one shot, invade, take all the objectives you like as quickly as possible. He has everything he needs to thrive at the end of the split, going into the next one before the big itemization shift. In a tale as old as time, Riot have buffed Jarvan's passive. I look forward to the next patch or two where they nerf his passive once again down to 7 or 6%. The thing is, they thought, hey, for Worlds, let's buff Jarvan. No one wants to watch Jarvan for the 15th straight year run around in full clear Riot games. We don't want to see this. We want new picks in pro play, interesting picks in pro play, not Jarvan. So the fact that they buffed him when he was already strong, let's get this straight. Jarvan has been strong for months and months at this particular stage. There is no debating that. They just basically said, well, you know, with good items and fast clear, he's, you know, you're banned, Virkayu. And I said, all right, I'll ban him, thanks. That's because Lilia, no spoilers here, but kind of spoilers, has been somewhat shot. Great in low elo, not great overall. Udyr overall, though, is an absolute menace. I've been promoting him to some people who needed to learn new junglers. I've been promoting him in coaching and in the private Discord for people who are looking for that map control farming sequencing beast. And guess what? He is. The entries into tank is still the way to go, but you can build a lot of different AD variations also. Much like Viego, when you've got these itemization diversity that you can build, the win rate kind of has a bit of a variance to it, except in Udyr's case. It's 52%. No matter what you do, it's basically broken. Enjoy, because next patch the items are changing and he will change and everyone will change, but for now, in the next 2 weeks, Udyr is God tier. And you know, with Hecarim and things like this, I understand with how they scale later into the game, with how their farming ramps up, with the rotations that they have, with the team fighting they have, they need to be a little bit weaker early. Except the thing is, Hecarim isn't. That W buff was one of the stupidest buffs I've seen in history, much like the Jarvan buff here. The guy is very, very difficult to kill, even at level 4. This champion is strong throughout the game at this particular stage, and he has really no inherent weaknesses other than pilot, skill issue, and itemization. And again, that's not an insult, that's just the thing to look in the mirror and say, right, why am I not performing on Hecarim when Chasik, rank 1 Korea, rank 1 world Hecarim, literally the best Hecarim in the world, hits rank 1 in Korea and sits there for months? The champion is Astro Omega broken. The win rate doesn't always represent the power because there are certain champions that can do well into it, like Nunu and Willump, but that's mathematically. In reality, a good Hecarim can also destroy them, so as always, get to work on your mechanics and your flow and your jungling. Think about your itemization and optimize it. Hecarim's in a very strong spot. Next up, we have Amumu, who's also in a strong spot, but he's really a bit more for the brand crowd. You know, brand's been destroyed a little bit. Now you can pick Amumu, you can farm, you press a few Qs, you press R, you just bleed all over people with your tears of acid. There's not too much to worry about. I think most junglers can defeat Amumu, they understand how to play against him, but he is, with this build and this Abyssal Mask and Conqueror, difficult to actually kill in isolation. If he gets on you with Q Bandage Toss, you will have problems if you're mobile and have no inherent healing or sustain. But overall, champion is great, it's simple, it's easy, you can execute in any MMR, much like Nocturne, but again, please don't build lethality full assassin. Can it work? Yes. What's wrong about it? You die very quickly. There's no reason not to think about your Stride Breakers, your Hex Plates, your Black Cleavage, Sterax. These things really do help you stick to people, ult them, and carry on for all eternity. There's no real downside to these builds. But again, he does fly under the radar, no pun intended, just because of the lethal tempo removal, and I still don't understand. There's been months and months now. The win rate is good, Conqueror performs really well. There's really no reason not to pick this champion if you're looking for an ult bot who can also map control, invade, and secure all objectives. You split push later, you bring the darkness. He does basically everything really well. Now, when they bring back lethal tempo in the new version, maybe that will then spice things up in terms of, hey, Nocturne, can you run into the jungle and go and kill the enemy jungler fisting pre-6? If that comes back, guess what? He's gonna go even higher on this list. Now, Xin Zhao is one of those champions that I've been promoting for months since 14.10, one of the only consistent ganking junglers since the experience buff to the jungle. That's because very directly, his ganks are so guaranteed and he has the experience to fall back to, and the counter jungling is so lethal that the champion was just good old-fashioned reliable. Now, obviously, you gotta understand your reset mechanic on the kit, you gotta make sure you're hitting those WEs, knowing when to layer the abilities, but overall, it's just got basically everything you need in a Conqueror build set, even if you want to go early game Halo Blades. In the right games, we're like, well, what if we buff the bonus damage on that Q and give you a bit more armor growth to make you tankier? And again, he didn't need it, but it's definitely directed at pro play. All these buffs and so on are directed at pro play, but I still don't agree. Jav and Xin Zhao, they were good enough for pro play already. There was no real reason to artificially boost that presence, especially not these two champions. Ain't nobody want to watch that, but in solo queue, you're gonna have to because they're strong. Alright, let's go A tier page. Gaming, Kayn is at the top, and again, you could 100% justify putting him instead of Xin Zhao's position. I'd be okay with that. I do think he's one of the best junglers in the game. Well-rounded, well-executed, Assassin Ross, itemization suits him. Basically, the tempo controls what you're trying to maximize here with your farming and your form. Don't get too caught up in cheese strategies. Play good, balanced jungling. Become the destroyer of worlds and carry on doing what you've been doing. Much like you good old checkmates, you know how we love you. Go ahead and cheese strategy, invade, gank, get ahead, and then fall back with Tiamat Gaming, farm it up, split push and dominate. Make those assassinations on those ADC mains as well, why don't you? It's just weird. I don't see people talking about this champion at all, and then I look at the OTPs, I'm like, man, they're really climbing. And then look at the data, I'm like, man, everyone should be climbing. There's no real inherent downside to picking him now. Obviously, Jarvan and Udyr and Rek'Sai and things can be irritating, but I really reckon a good, dominating, just warped in the right way kind of mind will be able to pilot this champion to challenger with no stress. Virkayu does provide a little bit of stress, but for the enemy jungler, her stat checking and her kit, absolute abomination. They've kind of reached this point where it's like, okay, well, she's fine, but she's, you know, not too bad, not too good. You can definitely use her to get to Diamond. Beyond Diamond, it does fall off a bit more, but given the nature of Eclipse being really, you know, a little bit ridiculous, Sundered Sky and such things, she's actually performing a lot better in Diamond Plus than I normally see. Now, next patch, when all of these items get nerfed and Eclipse loses that ridiculous max HP passive and just has a shield, we're gonna see the normalization of champion kits. We'll see which champion kits are truly abominations and which champion kits are absolutely destroying just because of itemization synergies. That will be interesting, and she'll be one of the champions we want to look out for. Next up, I'm bringing back the Nunu and Willump because honestly, their data's been good for months, and at this particular stage, the way the meta has worked, A lot of the other champions here have dropped off and fallen off, and they haven't, and they've gotten better. Please play them normally. This is a shout out to all of your entire population. The AP psychosis that you suffer from is irritating. When you die 12 times a game, you're not helping me when I'm playing lane. Build an AP item, go into full tank, play that way, play PO, play normally, utilize your passive properly, utilize tank gameplay properly, sustain properly. You don't need to be an AP one-shot machine. Because when you go in and you die, you don't help anybody. You're just straight up inting. I would much prefer, especially as a support player or a mid lane player or top lane player, to have that peel, to have that proper front to back. I know it's been memed and I know some people do have success farming and running around full AP. It's just not the best way to play, and I honestly hope Riot remove AP ratios to remove this kind of ridiculous playstyle and bring Nunu and Willem back to what they're meant to be played as. Sorry if that hurts your feelings, that's just the way it is. And if I did, feel free to go and play Bel'Veth, you know? Go and take your anger out on the map, go and use your stats to out-stat check everybody. Look, she's definitely weaker than she was. She's way more focused on level 6, true form, and Kraken spikes, much more than sort of invading, just outstatting you. That has gone away a bit due to the nerfs, but overall, if you play according to the correct tempo, the correct aggression, you're gonna notice yourself snowballing and controlling games and split pushing with void fishies just as much as you always have. So I'm putting Evelynn here, and this is my contentious pick. This is my, hey, this isn't quite technically where she should be, but I feel she can be if piloted correctly. It's still an assassin, and it's still an assassin against a lot of squishy targets on the map. And when Evelynn falls off the radar again, pun not intended, he's able to really move around the map with surprise. People forget what she does. It's one of those champions that really allows laners to play around her when they see you every game, but when they don't, they forget that Evelynn is Kemba. They forget that Evelynn can cheese in between lanes. They forget. And your job as Evelynn is to make them not forget you. And while this is a bit more of a debatable pick, her win rate does support, hey, this champion is performing very well in the meta. Master Yi's win rate is the opposite. He's been doing very, very well. His win rate this patch in particular due to matchup has fallen off slightly, but that doesn't stop what I've been seeing. Master Yi players not AFK farming, actually trying to get on the map and realizing the champion's DPS and fighting capability is a little bit unnatural. And when you get fed with a bit of gold because you scale with gold better than anybody else, there's very little people can do in isolation. There's very little people can do without any CC. And that's the thing. With Master Yi, if you AFK farm and miss good ganks, miss good invades, miss good skirmishes, you might be leaving gold on the table. So don't gamble for your gold, invest in trying to get that gold and do it correctly. So good jungling practices will allow you to get a bit more fed as Master Yi when you play a bit more aggressively and maybe think a little bit more like a Bel'Veth to get that gold. Don't AFK farm to the point that you're missing out, because when you get your item spikes, it's still just as ridiculous as it's always been. Now I was going to put Lilia here because I kind of predicted in the patch that rundown in my private Discord, hey, if this works, it'll be 49.5%, but I'm not sure if it is actually going to work. Turns out I was wrong about that, and it was 49.5%, which is great. And that means we can put Volibear back down here. Not as dominating as he has been, definitely not something that's as powerful as a lot of champions even on this A tier list itself, but his AP and AD variations are great, the tank atomization is great, and obviously he can farm a lot, he can gank a bit more, 3 points into W, 5 into Q. You're looking at a champion that can perform at every tier of play and at least do what needs to be done in order to climb. And for the low elo page, I think it's no surprise that Amumu, Nocturne, Briar, yeah, they're all actually still here. The Viego, Master Yi, and Warwick you shouldn't be surprised by, but yes, the Fleet Footwork rebuff for melees fixed Shyvana, and now in low elo, you can go Shyvana again. Her stat stick and stat check is not as powerful than average play and high elo play, but for low elo, it's absolutely great. For Lilia, we've spoken about it a little bit. The ult cooldown nerf doesn't affect anybody because 2 seconds, you know, is really a high elo thing where it's going to affect you in pro play. In low elo, it should still be enough for you to kill stuff. And obviously, you've got to think about the farming tempo being a little bit lowered. This will have way less impact in elos where people weren't farming optimally anyway. If you were sequencing properly in Lilia and spiking correctly, you will notice that farming nerf. But in low elo, when you're skirmishing and not doing it, he still skirmishes ridiculously well, and that's what I was worried about. That she'd become too much of a skirmisher who had no farming fallback, and people would realize, oh boy, I better use the passive and the healing and getting in people's faces because I'm actually really good at that. And so we will see if Lilia does change in that regard, but for now in low elo, do exactly whatever you've been doing. You're probably not even going to notice the nerfs. And in high elo, yes, Yarvin IV and Viego and Kha'Zix and Nidalee. Who could have expected such champions to dominate in high elo? The Graves one is people like, but Graves sucks. Graves is fine in high elo. If you're good with Graves, itemized properly, Graves is fine. Yes, he's not broken. That's okay because it's Graves. When he's broken, the game is awful. I gotta recommend the Udyr in the Heck Room here. Lots of speed. No, it's not patch 11.3 Chem Tank meta, but they're just as obnoxious as then, basically. Balveth is the one I've put here just because the data is absolutely incredible. And then when I face a Balveth, I'm always like, well, I don't know if I really want to play this out because it's just not a fun time when a good Balveth on high elo is gonna be eviscerating you with map invades and control and snowball. The honorary pick here will be the Skarner. It's not listed, it's not shown. Performing quite well in high elo, actually. The rework is an utter and complete failure, but if you want a great tank fighter thing or whatever it is, you can play him in high elo and have a lot of success. Those are your best junglers for the final patch before the end of Split 2. If you want to understand the 3 best ways for you to carry at this particular moment, I'm going to go ahead and recommend the video on your screen now that showcases all the different ways that jungle can control games.